welcome to my home. We live just in the northern part of the Paradise Valley where Yellowstone took place, that TV show you saw. As you can see, this is where I do all my writing, whether it be a strategic plan or whether it be a novel. I'm 88 years old. I grew up north of Chicago in Evanston, Illinois. I went to Purdue University, where I'm also a distinguished alumnus from Purdue University, and I also went to Indiana University. My degree at Purdue was a pharmacy degree. I also did a lot of singing in the Glee Club, which was pretty famous at the time. We sang on the Ed Sullivan Show and the Bob Hope Show, and we sang for President Eisenhower and that. So when I graduated and got my board certification in the state of Illinois, I went down to the Selective Service Bureau and I said, I want to be an officer in the Navy Medical Corps. They said, oh, I'm sorry, John, we don't do that. We don't have officers, we just have corpsmen. And I said, you mean the people, and the wonderful people, that run up on the beach with the Marines in front of the machine guns? And they said, well, yeah. And I said, I don't think so. So they said, we can make you an officer of the line. And that was a big change in my career, because otherwise my dad owned a community pharmacy. I've been brought up in pharmacy. I had a degree in pharmacy. Now I was going to have to go in the Navy with nothing to do with pharmacy. And I spent 5 years during the time when Kennedy got shot and the Berlin Wall came up, and we had the Cuban crisis and that. And I spent 5 years as a line officer in the Navy, mostly as an expert in anti-submarine warfare. And at the time, the Soviet Union, this was the Cold War, had over 500 submarines, and so ASW was a very major part of the Navy at that time. I got out of the Navy in 1963. I then married my beautiful wife, who we've been married now a year ago for 60 years, just the other day for 61 years. As I said, I'm 88 years old, still cognitive, still writing, love to tell stories, and I stayed in the Naval Reserve, active reserve, for another 26 years, total 31 years in the Navy, where I got the Meritorious Service Medal for what work I had done as an active reservist and the work I had done in anti-submarine warfare. So then I went into healthcare, and I'll talk about that a little bit more, but healthcare has been 60 years. I spent the first 50 years or 40 years running companies, being president of companies, took one company public, started 4 companies, and then in 2000, I actually came to Washington, D.C. That got me into really being in the third care of healthcare into long-term post-acute care. So that's sort of a background. I kept singing afterwards, and I had the Navy. So I really had, besides my family, 3 other type of successful careers, and that goes into my storytelling. I'm still working full-time for different committees in Washington, D.C., representing long-term post-acute care. I guess you would say my life now here in Montana is really a Zoom life. Before, I was traveling maybe 75% of the time internationally and domestically and going to meetings and that. Now, since COVID, most of the work I do is on Zoom, which is a beautiful medium for us to work from home in this beautiful vacation area of Yellowstone and that. But in some respects, you don't get to see the people that you're working with and you're associated with, and that's really disappointing. So my daily life, I come up here because we're on Mountain Time, and the world starts at 8 o'clock East Coast time. I'm up here at really around 7 o'clock in the morning, and I'm working clear through the afternoon. Mostly I'm writing papers. I still write a lot of papers. I've been published a lot of times on healthcare and strategy, because that's my main expertise. So that's my day. And then luckily, because I'm on mountain time, my day does end at 4 in the afternoon, and then I can spend time with the horses and with my family and walking on the down by the Yellowstone River, which is only a mile away, or walking up into the mountains. So that's my day, and I'm very happy with the day, living in sort of vacation mode. I've written all my life, whether it be poetry or something. I've always loved to tell stories. I'm a storyteller. I can write things fairly easily. I have a mind that's somewhat logic and follows a pattern. So I'm writing my next book right now, and I can see the characters as they move along in the story, and I visualize it because I've had a lot of experience out in the world and been a lot of places and that. So I just love to tell stories. And when I was working now in Washington, D.C., people were always laughing at my stories and that. So I said, I got to write books and novels, and also I incorporate within them a lot of business and marketing type of scenarios. I really love marketing, and that's somewhat storytelling in fact. Ancient Cure is about a cure for Alzheimer's. It's a fictional novel, and it takes place in a number of different places: New York City, Los Angeles, where I have an AI type of facility, in Singapore, Malaysia, Tokyo, Bandai, all places I have been and that. So writing Ancient Cure was fairly easy if I had a theme, and my theme was a pharmacist in Doylestown, Pennsylvania, was cleaning his copy machine, and he had a copy machine that did things in error, like producing another copy of a document without as a second document and not just the first document. He found this in the copy machine, and it has "secret for your eyes only," and he found it was part of a strategic plan for a new pharmaceutical to treat Alzheimer's that was stuck in his machine. And that he looked at it, and like I said, it said "secret for your eyes only." So he said, this is not supposed to be in my machine. Why did somebody copy it in my machine in Doylestown, Pennsylvania? And so he calls the CEO of James Pharmaceutical Company, which is a made-up pharmaceutical company in New York City, and tells him. He gets very alarmed, and that somebody has stolen his strategic plan, or one of his trusted VPs have taken it and made a copy, which they were not supposed to do. So he calls his old friend J.P. Koenig, or Jean-Paul Koenig, who lives in California, to come out to help him solve this mystery, because he's got too much work to do to enable to take the time to solve this. So that was the start of this character, Jean-Paul Koenig, who's my main character. He's got a PharmD degree. He's also an intro pharmacologist, which is a pharmacist. It's a new type of degree. It's a pharmacist who looks at plant life to make it into pharmaceuticals. And the book Ancient Cure is about taking the bark of a tree grown in Malaysia. It has a real long Latin name to it. The common name is called devil tree. The bark today is used by natives in that to treat nausea or getting throwing up and getting sick and that. And I take that bark and I do a number of things to it to get the alkaloid out of it, which then will repair the brain synapses. Now, where does all this come together? Well, it's my training. I mean, I've had the training and all the physiology and all of that. Plus, I've been to places, and a Vietnam veteran is part of a board of my AI unit in Westlake Village, and he's from Bandai, which is a beautiful place north of Tokyo that I've skied. I've also climbed Mount Fuji and that. So my feelings, and I remember all of these things. And Bandai then who has a physician, a Japanese physician who had a limp. And at the time, this was back in the 1800s, early 1900s, Japan ousted him and he came over to the United States and took medicine and went back to Bandai to form a company. And so they're gonna do the DNA bombardment, and so there's a merger. So all of these things all fit together in this mystery to figure out who stole that plan and what people were trying to keep James Pharmaceutical out of the marketplace. J.P. Corning, which in the book it calls J.P., he's a pharmacist. He's got a degree from Purdue University and that. So he's really my alter ego, or my type of personality, but I've also given him this degree of the ethnopharmacologist, which gives me a really lot of different stories to tell and that, and I've got about 10 right now that I'm telling stories. The one book I'm writing out right now is about sweetwater, sweet grass, which is grown up here east of here. So J.P. Corning is a very dynamic character, is a product developer type of person that takes like the bark from the tree in Malaysia, the devil tree, and the sweet grass, and takes the alkaloids out of them. But he's also a mystery person, a detective, if you will, that solves it. He's also in love with this person called Amanda, who's a marketing director at James Pharmaceutical Company. So there's a little bit of romance in the book. The book will be Ancient Cure is book number 1 of a series of books of J.P. Corning. Number 2, J.P. Corning is investigating the crime of an alkaloid that's grown in sweetgrass and that, and then on and on and on about J.P. Corning. My cure, it seemed very simple. I looked up and did a lot of research on the brain, which I'd also had in school, and all of a sudden I thought of this thing of repair the synapses in here, which is what causes Alzheimer's. And it's a very simple cure, but it had to be taken from the bark. And I know how to do that because I was in pharmaceutical manufacturing. I think to keep the technical part, I have to make it in the plain language. I mean, I can't go into like brain synapses and stuff like that because nobody's going to read that in a novel. And they are novels and that. So I have to keep it in the, I think TV helps out a lot because the pharmaceutical companies advertise a lot, and that's for the normal regular people out there. Here's a storyteller. One little story from that is, how did we figure out that the persons, the inmates in these big state mental institutions weren't taking their pharmaceutical? Well, they were pouching it in their mouth, and in New York City there was a big institution down in the Wall Street area, and they were spitting it out into the out the window, and the seagulls were eating it, and they were going all over the place. And we said, why are the seagulls acting crazy? Well, because they were taking a pharmaceutical that the inmates had spit. So that's part of storylines that come out of my work that I've done, and I think the pharmaceutical companies really do a lot of good work, plus working hard now in DNA and a lot of what we call Mr. Obama, President Obama, set up the precision medicine, which is working with DNA. Anish Chopra was the head of that for President Obama. Those types of research programs would take decades to come about, will really help all of you in it. And what I want to say is that it's a worthwhile profession. It's a worthwhile thing for you, for everyone, and they read my novels, and I think they'll come out with that. I think the pharmaceutical industry is a tremendous value to humans, to veterinary people, to society. We get kind of blasted a little bit because of the pricing of pharmaceuticals, but if you really understood what was going on and how much it took to develop a pharmaceutical, you really wouldn't be blasting them. When I was in business, I was somewhat associated with Premarin. Premarin stands for PRE, pregnant, MAR, mares, IN, urine. So the basic raw material is the urine from a horse and that. And of course, draft horses are the biggest horses and produce the most urine of a pregnant mare. And so there was these big farms around that actually caught the pregnant mare's urine, which was loaded with a hormone and that. So I was in charge of hormones at the pharmaceutical company and that. And then my daughter had this calling to start this sanctuary to save draft horses from slaughter, of which there are 20 horses out here. She's been doing this for 20 years. My story in Rescued by Love is that we rescued her, and the story is told by Molly Bell, by the horse. It's a horse's story about her full promise. There's a lot of pictures in that book. It is different, but in a way it's the same. It's a story, it's got pharmaceuticals into it, and it doesn't have J.P. Koenig into it because I hadn't put him as my character all along throughout all my novels and that. I now looked at the veterinary world, and James Pharmaceutical Company had a veterinary thing, to how could we actually communicate with horses. So horses, I studied their brains and found out there's some electrical charges in there that can be repetitive in that and actually grow their brain in that. So the example was a dressage, and how do you get a horse to understand that's what they have to do is they go around like in the Olympics we just saw and that, and keep doing it without kicking over the thing. Well, that's learning and that. And so you hug a horse from under its chin, and if you bond with them, they'll push against you and that. So I developed an electronic code that you put your hands up to their brain, which is right behind the ears and that, and you can get like a Morse code. So Promise had a Morse code that 2 beeps said he agreed with what you said. So it's both pharmaceutical and love, and to maybe hopefully change horses from being livestock to being social animals, so we don't kill them, and we don't, with all due respect to people that like to eat horse meat, we don't eat them, and some of the other sad things we do for horses. When you read Rescued by Love, you'll start to see that they're not really pets. They are, and they have a personality, and they really have to be taken care of more because they do so much for us. We're now at the ranch here, we're now getting into equine therapy. It's a combination of love, and that's why the title has it in there, because that Molly Bell was on her way to a slaughtering house, and Debbie was there. And if you read it, you'll see from Molly Bell's eyes, she keeps seeing this wonderful person walking around with a jacket on, and all of a sudden she goes up and the person actually buys her from the auction house. And that's the love that Deborah saw in the horse, and the horse saw it from the feeding lot. So that, I think, points out about how we should be treating animals. Hopefully horses would be classified more as a social animals, and we wouldn't just think of them as dumb livestock and kill them. All of my travel has shown how many, every nation I've ever gone to, it's amazing. People on an individual basis are such wonderful people. Understanding us, understanding how we all fit together as a system of humanity, and working with the animals and working with other people, and we can all learn from each other. And that's what I'm trying to get my books to say. So there's a little subtle message without getting into politics or anything like that, that's in my books. And I hope to keep doing it that way and go to foreign countries. I just learned about some special forest that exists in France that I'm going to have to go visit that might have some things. You can see the Amazon has a whole lot of pharmaceuticals that's come from it. We're now looking at marine life, and that's what that in-throw pharmacologist specialty is to look at that. And that's sort of from a semi-retirement position, that's what I want to do. What I would like to get the reader, and I think once you know J.P. Koenig and what he does and the other characters in the books, you will know that by love, by association, by helping humanity, there's a higher quality of life. The first memory I have was when I was 5 years old. So I got 83 years of experience that I have in that. So it's all those things will play a role in the books that I write. I have a list of books that I'm going to write using J.P. Koenig. I love Clancy's Jack Ryan in his books, and that's what I'm going to try to emulate. That he took, although he wasn't a Navy man, he lived in Annapolis. In fact, I have, when I retired from the Navy after 21 years, a friend of mine gave me his first 5 books, all hand signatured by Clancy in that. And he took research, took his living in Annapolis next to the Navy guys, and made a tremendous character in Jack Ryan, and now Jack Ryan's son in that. Well, I'm hoping that J.P. Koenig will be the same type of person and have a long life of novels and doing the other things that I've talked about previously.